Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. Today, Jennifer and I are going to talk about a topic that really doesn't get a whole lot of attention, and it really should, especially because there's all these ideas around loneliness and affordable housing or the lack thereof. And our two guests today are going to talk to us about something that could help both of those issues. We're going to talk about co-housing and the iterations therein. But our guests are Amy McKenna, who is the managing broker of Windermere Real Estate Company.
A managing broker. I only correct you because it's easy to get that mixed up.
Yes. A managing broker, yes. And Ruby Grynberg, who is a branch manager of Salmon Bay Community Lending. They're both out of Seattle, Washington, but they created CoHome, which is a community platform for education and connection because they saw a yearning for ingrained community and more affordable housing, and at the same time, a feeling of helplessness about how to attain both of those. So Ruby and Amy, thank you so much for being here with us today. We're very excited to talk to you all about this.
Us
Thank you
too.
for having us.
So I am curious, how did each of you first discover this concept of co-housing? And then perhaps, how did you start working on it together?
So it was kind of there's a small spark and then sort of a natural evolution. So I'm a regular old residential real estate agent in Seattle. And I've worked numerous times with Ruby as a lender on many transactions. And I've always liked working with her because she's an excellent educator, excellent communicator. So about a year and a half ago, I was requested to give a talk to a polyamorous community group. And they tried to have people like financial planners, estate planners, all very logistical stuff for people in their day-to-day lives, more complex households. So I was just asked to give that talk with no parameters, just whatever would be useful to this community. And I was like, well, what's different about that community? Well, they have a higher likelihood of wanting to either buy with other people or live near other people, but not necessarily have the finances intertwined. So it could be a combination of both, or, either the financial or the social or some sort of combo. So I started interviewing people and just sort of developing this. And I asked Ruby to come on because lending would obviously be a huge part of the talk. And happily she agreed. And she gives talks all the time. So it was a natural fit. I also asked my business partner, Glenda Fabrizio, who actually is based up north and works on a lot of vacant land and development deals, to come and do it, because she could talk about the thing that everyone talks about. Everyone wants to buy a plot of land and put all the tiny homes on it, right? But everyone talks about it's just a dream, but what does that actually entail? So we did it, and we were like, wait a second, this is not, there's a wide variety of people this applies to. I mean, the fact that we were talking to polycules doesn't matter. Your intimate relationship doesn't matter for the transaction. So we started saying, why don't we kind of see what more we can do for this? And also people it seemed like people were daunted by it. It felt like it was a bigger hurdle than it necessarily needed to be. And I think a lot of the models out there are traditionally, say, very large co-housing communes or whatever, which are really larger entities and far more complex, and they're wonderful. But there's an interim, regular layperson's day-to-day way of just living with their friends. It isn't necessarily that complicated and doesn't have any more risks than, it's risky to buy a home. It's risky to get married. It's risky to get married and buy a home with your spouse. But I think that we often have a perception that it's disproportionately risky to do it with your friend relative to your spouse or whatever. I hated the idea that people weren't doing something simply because they didn't know about it. And I wanted them to understand some of the logistics. So if they then decided, oh gosh, I've learned everything, it actually doesn't work for me. Great. Wonderful. but I want there to be a feeling of possibility, and that at least as far as the transaction goes, and that's where Ruby and I are, it isn't necessarily that much more wildly complicated if you're just talking about 2 or 3 people. Now, it is more complicated on Ruby's end, definitely. Um, but then we developed it over the course of the last year and a half and didn't really know how it would fit. But the more that we just mentioned it to people, people go, like this excitement that is like, wow, it was surprising. So we continued that. And then I called the Seattle Times and said, why don't you have any articles about this? Like, you really know. I was like, this seems just like this is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we should. Can you talk to us? Yeah, I said, yeah. And talk to these people and talk to
Now
these
you're
people
the
and come to our
expert.
class. Yeah. And I go, and then there are other people who are experts in other areas, right? So I said, Ruby and I sort of talk and say the more mainstream, smaller group, you know, but then we are acquainted with, say, organizations like Frolic, who may be able to help you construct a larger co-op or something like that. And so we may be sort of the gateway of information, and hopefully our professional services can help you. But if they can't, we might know someone that maybe we can send you to. And maybe you don't need us, but maybe you need an estate attorney who sort of understands these logistics. So there was enough enthusiasm, but not enough centralized knowledge that we felt like we could bring something new, often just by concentrating things, not necessarily reinventing the wheel, just clarifying and concentrating information.
One word you said in there, daunting. People will see this as daunting. I certainly do. I look at it and think, oh, how could all my friends and I retire together in a nice, beautiful home? What are the misconceptions around what are the main things people think that are daunting that are not?
Well, and Ruby, feel free, please, to jump in. I think they do know that finances will be more a little more
Complicated.
complicated, and I do
Mhm.
want to acknowledge that, when people buy as a married couple, you do it with the understanding that you have a lifetime plan together,
Right.
Right.
despite the fact that 40% of first marriages don't work out that way.
Right.
Exactly.
And then there are certainly legal logistics around it. I think that people do understand that the running of it will take a little more thought,
Hmm.
to make sure that you account for different futures, possibly different living futures, but in a way that could be a strength, because then you're not taken by surprise in the way that, say, a divorce is.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I think probably some of the most daunting stuff is simply possible complexity of finances. As
Mm.
And how does that work, Ruby, when a group of, like, let's say Raquel and all of our friends decide we wanted to, 5 of us want to buy a house together to retire. How
Yeah.
would we go about that financing?
So the irony is that the process
Hmm.
follows the exact same path that it would be if you were just purchasing by yourself or with your partner, where you start off coming together, and the daunting part is knowing where to start.
Yes.
Oftentimes, friends who have this idea will spend hours, if not weeks, if not years, sitting around a table imagining, okay, well, I can have my space and you have yours, and then we have one big space. Okay, wait, no, but I want, and there's a lot of energy put into the physicality of the space.
Got
And
it.
those conversations don't get you any closer.
Mm.
That's true.
They just don't, right? You can keep, and you feel like you're being productive because you're talking about it.
But
And
you're
you're
just running around in circles, basically.
just running around in circles.
Yeah.
And in our culture, there's not a lot of practice or acceptance of, so how much money do you make a month?
Totally.
And what are you comfortable with
Hmm.
in your housing payment? And are there debts that you have to take care of before you feel like you can embark on this journey? Or, like having those really just numbers conversations takes a getting over, and just
Hmm.
everybody going, okay, we want to do this together. So we are creating a safe space, and let's start creating that safe space now. And then the productive conversation to have with your friends is, how much can you as a group pay every month as a payment, right? Maybe one person can say, okay, I can do 2,000 a month. Okay, I can do 1,000 a month. Okay, I can do, and maybe it's all, everybody's doing the same amount. Maybe it's different amounts, but coming to an agreed upon total number that is comfortable for a monthly payment. And then everybody taking the time to agree upon how much they can put towards this transaction.
Okay.
I've got this money in savings, or I can borrow from my 401k, or I can sell a property, or whatever it might be. But going from it's very easy to stay in gray area and kind of nebulous, like, well, I mean, I've got some savings. Okay,
Right,
or is that already earmarked for something else? Or is this actually available for this? And if you sold your house, how much would you really net? Right. So it takes everybody gaining clarity on how much they can put towards this transaction. Once you have those two numbers, which is the same if you're just buying a house by yourself, you got to
Or with
close a monthly
a
payment.
new spouse, or, you know,
Or
Yeah.
right, this is
Yes.
nothing new to home buying.
yes.
It's just doing it with people that you aren't romantically linked to.
Right.
Which might be all the better.
A lot easier in many ways, because there's
Yeah.
all kinds of other, stuff that is not attached to those
Yeah,
conversations.
give me my own bedroom and let's share a kitchen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So once everybody can articulate those two numbers and like, okay, I'm ready to move forward, now you're in the position to actually start the process. Because then it doesn't take much to calculate, okay, well, with those two, what purchase price are we looking at? And even ideally, you then fill out a loan or everybody fills out a loan application, and you confirm, okay, can we qualify for this purchase price? Because being able to make those payments doesn't mean you qualify to make those payments.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But so it's articulating those two numbers, filling out a loan application to confirm that that's actually financially possible. But even if you're not ready to fill out a loan app, now you can have a purchase price and you can start to see, okay, let's say we all qualify for, I'm going to make something up and say $2 million as a purchase price, or $1 million, or whatever. Now remember, we're in Seattle, right? So like
Exactly.
$1 million. So $1 million doesn't get
Well,
you right.
Atlanta's not going to be that different.
Well,
Atlanta's pretty pricey too.
Okay, and there
Yeah.
might be parts of the country where you go, okay, if we qualify for 500,000 together, where do we want to live? Where is that possible?
Got it.
And then you can start to have productive conversations about location, configuration. That's when those conversations become applicable. But if you do it upside down and start talking location and configuration before you have a real number, then you just stay in this really unproductive cyclical, and then it makes it feel more impossible because
Right.
now 5 years have gone by.
Mhm.
See how hard it is? We can't
Right.
really do this. You're like, well, you haven't started.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
we
so
say that we all talk about our sexual kinks very easily these days, but God forbid anyone know what's in our checkbook or in our bank account. We
right.
don't talk. That's the third rail. You don't talk about finances, but that's very important.
That needs to change.
Right.
So we
Yeah,
need
that,
to be
that needs
we
to
need,
change.
we need to be telling each other what we make, what kind of jobs we're doing, so that we can level out the playing field here.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Exactly.
one huge advantage the polyamorous community has is that they're used to clear, explicit, difficult conversations and being very plain about things because they know what goes wrong later. So it would be that would be a good policy for all of us to adopt. And just plain neutral, just the facts, ma'am, conversations.
That's
Right.
interesting that you say that. Having worked with that community, have you developed a list of questions to give to potential buyers to say, we need to discuss this before we move into this?
Yes, Amy developed a beautiful worksheet.
And our
Nice.
worksheet, like polyamorous community is kind of the spark, but there's
Right.
nothing particular to their process that's any different from anyone else. So I
Mhm.
did start a very basic starter worksheet. So the beginning of it is a checklist of financial things that Ruby goes over in the talk. But actually, before that, what Ruby pointed out that's really important is we all love to talk about the physical part, right? But I want people to both talk about the finances, but also start with the why.
Mm,
Like, I want to live next to my friend, have separate finances and do this, but then we have a shared area, or we want to work together. And I need that, just say as a realtor, if I'm looking for your home, you can't just tell me you need this room. You need to tell me, what are you going to do in that room? Because we may find a property that works in other ways, and then there's a space that isn't that room, but it works for you. It does that thing for your life that works for you. So start with your why and make sure that everyone's why is the same. Now, maybe someone's coming in as an investor. Maybe someone's like, I'm
Mm.
putting money in, and then one person puts money in, they're not living there. Another person can invest, but then they rent that room. Other people are owners. So I'm not prescribing anything, but I'm just saying that there are configurations for people who are in different states.
Right.
And someone says, I'll invest in the property because I have the money, but I don't need the space. And then another person's like, well, I want to live with this group of friends. I don't have the down payment or the credit score. So I will pay rent in this place to be near my friends. Everyone else is earning equity. So I'm just saying this is a possibility, right? So if
Sure.
I go back to the worksheet, start with your why, go through the financial checklist, and then there's some basic things about the home. And then what's your list of, how do you maintain this? Like, who's going to do the admin? Who's going to be the landscaper? Who's going to do this? What's your schedule for talks? Have a set schedule. I have a friend who co-owns with her husband and brother-in-law, and they have a safe word for if discussions get icky. She says, we haven't used it yet, but I'm sure we will. And just assume you're human beings.
yes.
Stuff
Right.
come up.
Yeah.
And what are your finances, joint finances? So say a reserve fund. How are regular utilities paid? How are you setting money aside for when the roof needs to be replaced in 5 years? These are all best practices. I actually gave one of these to one of my clients who's an attorney, and she said, oh, I should have filled this out with my husband. I
Yes,
should have done
exactly.
this.
I mean,
Yeah.
Exactly.
that's
And
the thing. How
and
many calls do I get of, oh my God, I have to replace my roof and I don't have any money?
Mhm.
it may sound daunting, this worksheet, but this is what all of us should be doing.
We should
And
be.
95% of us don't.
Right.
Right.
So
Right.
you're actually in a more conscious position.
When I was getting prepared for today and, doing all of the research and looking things up, there were so many different iterations of co-housing, and then there's different terminology. Like there's co-housing, there's co-living, there's all these different ways of
Intentional
doing it.
communities and
Yeah, intentional communities, all that. It looks different in different situations. You can have people all living together in one house, but everybody has their own private spaces and then they come together in a shared space, or you can have friends who buy a piece of land together and then just have houses
yeah.
on that
Mhm.
land, and then maybe a shared some sort of like bungalow type space where they all come together,
Yeah.
or even situations where like what you were talking about, Amy, where there's investors who invest in it and then people just move in and rent spaces
Right.
almost like a boarding house. And to be honest, I mean, there's a group of friends that I have who it's a couple and then a single, and they all live together.
Yeah.
I think they've bought a house together now. I'm not completely sure. Maybe they're just renting. And then there's another friend, a newer friend. I don't know her as well, but she and her friend group, they are literally searching for land. There's a group of them. They're searching for land, and they've gone through a lot of the process that y'all are talking about.
Hmm.
One thing that kept coming up in my head is what are the legal considerations for all this? Because there's always zoning laws for crap. And there's places that are like, oh, we don't like duplexes, or we don't want multifamily homes, or whatever. So what are some of the legal blocks, I guess, that you guys have either come up against yourselves in working with your clients, or that you've heard other people coming up against?
Start with your why, right?
Okay.
So maybe your why, actually, when you're talking about friends, I know two couples who want to live next to each other, raise their kids together, but they want separate homes. So we'll try to buy them a package to new townhomes at the same time. So it's a discrete, it's a discrete legal ownership. That doesn't quite get back to your question. First of all, we do talk about the three most common ways of holding title. And to a certain degree, we will defer this to an attorney or title expert.
Of course,
We'll,
of course.
we'll be the gateway of the most basic information, right?
Right.
And we often talk to people who are the simplest formation. A lot of it is kind of up to you guys. And we say have an exit strategy established.
Ooh,
There are going to
exit
be
strategy.
there are going to be
Absolutely.
there are going to be two exit strategies. There's going to be one exit strategy, which is the exit strategy that we intend now, which is we want to own for 15 years and then sell together. Or we want to own for 10 years and then one of us wants to move out and then the first one wants to buy us out, right? This is what we intend right now. That may change. Then there's a when the shit hits the fan exit strategy. You better have an estate. We should all have an estate plan anyway. But let's say someone becomes disabled,
Yes.
relocates.
Right.
Yep.
Let's say a partner comes in or out. Let's say someone gets pregnant. Let's say, or just something happens. So there are going to be two exit strategies as long as you're talking about them, writing them down, establishing it on a regular basis. It's okay. It's between you. We do have some attorneys and we say, work on this as much as you possibly can. And then go to an attorney and say, hey, are we on the right track? Is this the right formation? We don't say, we don't want you to go spend, pay $500 an hour from the get-go. There's a lot of stuff. You get these things in line yourself because ultimately it's on you to maintain this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to an attorney with the goal that you never have to see another attorney again for this reason, right? If you do it right.
To put the kind of structure around answering the question of what are those hurdles around, Amy, what you just said is that you want to make sure that your title documents are in line with your estate documents, are in line with your co-housing agreement. And the title documents are going to be recorded obviously with the title, and that is one set. But then your estate docs, you just want to make sure that there's no conflict between those. Because if your title documents say one thing and your estate planning says something else, then if you do pass, that's going to be wreak absolute havoc
A mess.
for
Yep.
the rest of the team,
Yep.
right? For the rest of the group. And then your co-housing agreement, that's not going to be recorded anywhere. That's just an agreement between you that an attorney can help you solidify. But you might get it notarized. You kind of make it as formal as you feel necessary within your group. It's always better to be more formal. And I've personally done co-buying with a colleague of mine many years ago for an office, and it was the back of a napkin. Right. And we bought a property, and then she bought me out when I went and wanted to buy a different property, and it all worked great. It was fine. But and I think that happens a lot. Still, professionally, we will always encourage people to go a more formal route in case things get more complicated, and especially when there's more than two people. That was me and one person. It was very simple. She had one daughter. We all knew the players involved if anything happened. But I think in terms of those putting structure to that, it's title, estate, co-ownership agreement.
Now, you mentioned that there are three main configurations of these groups. Briefly, what are those three?
When I said it was sort of the three most common ways of holding title.
Oh, of holding
Is
title.
probably what
Okay.
I should say.
Okay.
And I hope the title expert's going to come in and correct exactly how I'm phrasing
Joint
this.
tenancy in common.
So
And then what's the
and this
third?
may be another state. So actually
Okay.
this is
Right. It is state specific.
it is state specific. So there's joint tenancy with rights of survivorship, which is normally what we think of, you say with a married couple or life partners, where the shares are equal and they're bound together. Now, in that case, let's say that there's a group of three and you have joint tenancy with rights of survivorship. If someone dies without an estate or whatever, I'll say they're all joined together. So it goes from 33% to 50%. So that actually is a way,
Mhm.
as I understand it, to actually protect the interests of the other people if you have no intention of passing it along outside or until you have an estate. Maybe it might make sense to do joint tenancy until all of you have, to make sure everyone's interest is secure, until you have an estate, and then maybe make it into tenants in common. Tenants in common are where everyone can have a different share, different percentage of the ownership, and then that can be willed or conceivably sold. There may be some real marketable logistics around selling it, but it is a certain proportion of it. And then you can own broadly, and I probably getting over my skis in this, but let's say that you own within an LLC, which is what a lot of people will think about, right? So that's a business entity, which has financing repercussions, number one. But the advantage of owning an LLC, because the LLC is the owner of the property, is that there's flexibility within the business for people to come and go and have different interests and own other
That makes
assets.
sense.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Right.
Yeah.
Now there's more paperwork administration, there are financing considerations, but that often makes sense, let's say, for a large group or investors. And then Ruby can talk about
Right.
why things to consider. Also, I think insurance might be one too, right? Yeah.
LLC co-ops are very similar that way, and a lot of things do get set up as co-ops.
Okay.
There are many co-housing communities that kind of look and feel like co-ops, but they've done the paperwork to be condominiums
Ah,
because it
Mm.
simplifies drastically the ability to purchase and sell, right? To buy and sell somebody, then you're fitting in the system
mhm,
and you get the benefits of fitting in the system, getting,
mhm.
residential mortgages. And so I've helped communities make their documents, match the requirements to be a condominium so that they can get residential financing. So those are some of the different legal structures.
Okay. So I
Yeah.
guess the question I really wanted to ask is, what do the parties who are
Parties look like. Yeah,
look
that's what
like?
I thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm interested. The reason we started researching this whole topic is Raquel and I were talking about our own aging
Yeah.
as women who I have children, but they're grown, and Raquel doesn't have children, and some of our friends don't have children. And should we all live together?
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah, like what's
and
gonna happen to us when
Totally.
we're old ladies?
yeah,
Yeah.
how do we take care of each other moving into, and we're just wondering, what do these groups look like? Do they look like us?
I would just speak that to, I think there's those groups oftentimes stay, what kind of said earlier, of talking in circles.
Yeah.
It's harder for those groups
Yeah.
to take the necessary actions to move forward. Totally possible. But what I see in terms of groups that I've helped do this typically fall in the either multi-generational, that's
Oh,
probably
that's cool.
the most
Okay.
common, right? You got
Right.
grandparents, kids, they've got little kids. We're trying to handle, they're trying to handle both how to help the parents age and also with childcare and how expensive that is. You join forces and
That's
everything
cool.
becomes much more affordable. And then they grow up with
Yeah.
their grandparents and yay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? So that's sort of the simplest and and very common way of doing it. But even that has stigma. What do you mean your mother-in-law's moving in? People have to face that and be like, yes, yes, we are. And isn't that great?
Yeah.
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 Well, it used to be the norm, you
Exactly.
know?
This is hardly, we act like it's
Yeah.
super
We're
novel. And we're like,
for
no,
forever.
that's more old
Yeah, we're
fashioned.
not recreating the wheel here.
No, this is like I feel like we're kind of waking up from a failed social
Capitalism.
experiment,
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
the second community that I've recently helped a couple of these is where they're either pregnant or have small children.
Mhm.
And they're like, oh my God, this parenting thing is like,
Yeah.
let's join forces. They've generally will buy like a house with 2 kitchens, right? So
Mm.
that they each kind of have their own space, but they're shared childcare and
Ooh, I
support
like
there.
that.
And then Amy, we talked to this group where where it's a larger group and they're building a space, right? They're really the architects, and it's also centered around the kids. And then you have the folks, kind of what you're talking about, of how to join forces and age together.
Mhm.
So those are kind of the primary groups. Amy, what do you?
I don't know if you read the Seattle Times article in May. There were 2 articles in the Seattle Times. One was profiling quite a few of these groups, and
Mhm.
then there's a short sidebar about me and Ruby. But my neighbor said, I was surprised. I thought it would have been younger people who did it. And she's like, it's mostly older. I mean, let's say middle adulthood on up. And I think at first maybe I thought that too. There'd be young people desperate for equity or whatever. But uh, I think young people, first of all, you have a less of a clearer sense of your future. So it does
True.
feel riskier.
Mhm. Mhm.
Then when you hit, let's say middle age, let's say that you're raising kids, God, everyone's hungry for childcare help and also to see your friends without having to hire a babysitter and schlep across town,
Totally.
I know
and to
it's
have their
$100 to
kids
raise
play
my
together.
house.
Just like have an easy friendship. Like think about how many friends you lose when you become a parent, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then of course, when you're older, you have more of a sense of your own future and how you want to live. So that actually does kind of make sense.
Yeah. When it's the youngins, like a bunch of singles, um, oftentimes what I've seen is that, oh, we all want to live together and blah, 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 blah. And then there's like 1 or 2 people that gurgle to the top who have the tech jobs and have good credit scores, like documentable income. And they're like, okay, we're actually the ones buying it. And then they kind of rent to everybody else.
Right.
That
That also
Right.
seems very techy.
that's
Mhm.
at least in our area. That's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
when it's not centered around kids, that's oftentimes what happens.
Right.
Maybe you can't answer this question, but when you work with older groups of, let's say, we're a feminist podcast, so let's just say women coming
Yeah,
together,
totally.
That's really,
Right.
wanting to
yeah.
take care of each other. Are there
I love the
agreements?
Golden Girls.
Yes. Are there agreements like I break my hip and so they're responsible to take care of me and I'm responsible to take care of them? Is that part of the arrangement?
You can
Or
put
is,
whatever you want in that
or is that
cohousing
just our
agreement.
friendship agreement?
The good news and the bad news is that it's your decision.
Okay.
It's between you guys. So that means that you have all the flexibility in the world to create what you want. That also means if you don't talk about it and you end up being on different pages, you have different assumptions, then
Yeah.
it does go pear-shaped. But that's true in a marriage, right?
I was
If
just
you
gonna
don't talk
say,
Absolutely.
about stuff, like
Absolutely.
you're just humans in relationship with each other.
we didn't really think our husbands were gonna take care of us.
Right.
So, and
Well,
and a lot of
I've
That
not
is
times,
ever
nice.
had a husband, so obviously
Oh,
there's no husband
cheers,
taking care of
sister.
me.
Like,
Yeah,
well
there you
done.
go.
and that's a very
Coming
popular
off.
trend. Actually, I ran into a married couple the other day who lived separately,
Yeah, yeah,
and
I've known
That
people like that.
seems ideal to me.
Mhm.
and a lot of women go, "That sounds great.
Mhm.
Yep.
Like, I love them, but can we just to have our own spaces, right?"
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no
Really,
recipe.
the key is communication, isn't it?
Communication. One piece around the financial piece is that, let's say together you have a $5,000 mortgage payment, just to make something up, right? And you go, okay, well, my portion of that is 1,500. The thing though is that everybody's responsibility, my responsibility is 5,000, your responsibility is 5,000, your
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
every
Got it.
single person has the
Legal
legal obligation to
Yeah.
make sure that gets paid regardless of what previous arrangements are
Yeah.
in place. And so that goes back to what Amy said about having the reserves.
Mhm.
You've got to have reserves because you can't say, it's not my fault that she lost her job. And so
We're not paying our mortgage this
we
month.
paid 3/4 of our mortgage.
Right.
Right.
Why are you foreclosing on me? I paid my part,
Mhm.
right? The lender doesn't give a rip.
Yeah, exactly.
They do not care. And I think that really needs to be just clear. I
Mhm.
mean, that again, just as if you're buying with your spouse, they lose their job, you still have to make the full mortgage payment.
Yeah.
But for some reason, when we get into the co-housing arena, people start to make assumptions that there's for some other types of protections, and they're not.
Yes, you're vulnerable to someone else losing their job or getting sick. The good news is if you lose your job or get sick, there is someone else who does have a financial stake in that mortgage getting paid.
Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
and hopefully that's all copacetic and you've talked about this and you actually can put in your own reserves. That's the best practice. But there's going to be a bit of a safety net that you don't when no one else has any financial interest in your home.
Right.
Mm.
Right. You face
Wow.
foreclosure so much faster when you're by yourself.
That's true.
Is end of life planning and medical planning a bigger deal for people who are co-housing?
And that's
It's
good. Making
it's
sure
part of
those
our
options.
talk. It's
Yeah.
Okay.
and we say at the end we talk about co-ownership agreement. We talk about just roles and duties, and at the end we recommend minimum 3 things. At the very minimum, get a health directive and a POA, because any of us can get into a ski accident anytime.
True.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's not expensive and it's not hard. So we really double down that, and I'm embarrassed at how long it took me to get one.
Me too.
And then ideally you have an estate plan. That is
Get
a
her done,
bigger
McKenna.
lift.
Yeah.
It's more complex, but it is in your interest. And maybe until everyone has an estate plan, maybe you do joint tenancy. Like maybe that's a motivator, and then maybe you can convert to tenants in common. You can talk to a title rep so that people's percentages are assured. It is a possibility.
Mm.
But yeah, we should all have one. It's
We
just a
should.
hassle, but do it. And we have some great estate attorneys that we talk to.
I just 2 months ago did co-ownership with my second son.
Hmm.
He's 21. He just turned 22 last week, and I helped him buy his first house
Oh,
here in
cool.
Seattle. And that was an example where he's living in it and I'm a non-occupant co-borrower, because as a busser at a restaurant, he cannot qualify to buy in Seattle. But with his roommate, they can make the payment,
Yes.
right?
Right.
So he wouldn't be able to qualify, but he can actually do it. And the sooner that he can start building that equity, then the more solvent he is. And I am making him meet with an attorney later this month to create a will, because
Smart.
like you are a property owner now, and even if you feel and kind of look like a 22-year-old pisher, right? You're like, oh, okay, but it's real. And so
Right.
it forces another level of just accountability and adulting, as they
Yep.
say.
Mhm.
That's wonderful. I did not think of that scenario as co-housing.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
But it
that
is.
didn't occur to me.
Well, and
And
and that's why we use co-home ownership for like what we talk about, because sometimes it's co-living, sometimes co-housing, but it is for us. It's about what people actually have ownership in a property, and they may be just investors, they may be co-signers.
Yeah.
It all comes under the umbrella of what we talk about. Absolutely, and I have that. Ruby helped me with a client, and his mother helped him buy his first home, but she owns 2/3 of the property, and she put it in as a 1031 exchange as a tax advantaged investment.
Oh, how
Right.
cool.
Right.
Yeah.
and I hear folks in their 20s, and also the parent, and my friends and parents being like, oh my God, this market, how will our kids
How
ever do
will
it?
Right.
they?
Yeah.
And then you just stop the conversation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, like, well, actually,
Well, well,
you
that's
could
been
step
my
up.
case. Well, not the whole kid thing, but how can I afford it? Okay, never mind.
I mean, and it's just getting creative and having the conversations and thinking outside the box and using rent, okay, how can I use rental income? How can I use this? Okay, you can help me qualify. Okay, you can help me pay the rent, or your rent
Yep.
can help me pay the mortgage, like putting the pieces together to create possibilities.
Can it also work the other way when siblings inherit property together? They must in some ways be co-owners until they decide what to do with that property.
Yeah.
That's another example I have. Like it's almost the simplest form of co-ownership. Let's say they don't buy it, they just inherit it, but it's still the idea that whether you go through the transaction, you're still owners.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so that's another example. Now, you may not need maybe our services necessarily. Maybe you'll refinance with Ruby, but you wouldn't necessarily need me to buy it. But you need to know what the ownership is, and you should then have a co-ownership agreement. You should have an exit strategy. You should have all of that stuff, because really where the rubber hits the road on this is the long-term maintenance.
Yes.
Right. It's about keeping the relationship healthy. We
Yeah.
try to emphasize, you want to maintain your property, you want to repair the sidings, you want to replace the roof, you want to service the HVAC, and you want to service the relationship every bit as much as you service the house.
Yeah.
That's
And I
It's
could
important.
see,
crucial.
That's
and I
important.
could see with siblings, like maybe they have different ideas of what they would do with that property.
Right. So maybe, I mean, if we're really talking about communicating and getting all of the ducks in a row, maybe the parents, when they're putting in their will that they're going to leave this house or this property to their children, can the parents put in their will that here's the co-home ownership piece of it that
Good luck.
right, well, okay, sure, but I mean, it's a thought, right?
Right,
The
like-
parents could put that into their will that once we are gone and this property has passed on to our children, that at least for X amount of time, this is how the house will be dealt with. Can
I
that
mean,
happen?
I think, I mean, when you're creating a will, you can add any old addendum. I mean, when they say, what music do you want played at your funeral, right? Like, if you could add
Sure.
that, then you seems like you can be able to add at least an outline or guidance for
I
your
was gonna
kids.
say, but will
Right.
they actually play that too?
Oh, I
And this
told my
is
mother,
where-
no, we're playing whatever we want at her funeral. She can give me the list as long as the day, we're the ones there.
Right.
So we'll consider it.
Right.
But this is
But-
also where, like the two of you joining forces, you have such an advantage over a bunch of siblings
Agreed.
that have
100%.
so much history.
Yeah.
And, but you stole my girlfriend in
Exactly.
7th grade and da 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 da, like whatever it is.
Yeah. And the
That-
sentimental attachment to things.
Very true.
Right. That as
Very
a
true.
as
A
a group
lot of
friends,
emotion involved in these things.
you have and play to those strengths. The fact that you're friends, the fact that you're coming at this as adults. And I mean, I know, that the whole concept of like your second marriage is that's where you really know who you are and what you're looking for. And it's kind of like that other version of a second marriage where you get to step into it, knowing yourself, knowing your priorities, and being able to articulate them.
What are the downsides of co-housing?
I give an example. I'm helping a fellow refi right now, and he's in the middle of a divorce or just wrapped up a divorce, and he co-owns a vacation property with two other couples. So the six of them bought it. If this was they all went there, they partied there together, and then they had it on Airbnb, so they all made money. It was fine and dandy. Now two of the three couples are getting divorced, and one of the peers is like, I don't want to sell. I like it. I want this. I'm not going to sign anything. And that's an example of not having good co-ownership agreements. They
An exit
didn't come
strategy.
up with their exit strategy.
Right.
Now he has to refi to get the money to pay his ex, and he can't because he has that $6,000 mortgage payment on his credit report.
Oh,
And he can't sell it without this other owner agreeing to. So what can go wrong is a lack of good preparation.
yeah.
Right.
Totally see that.
So basically, communication and preparation are key to any iteration of any of this,
Mhm.
whether it's two people romantically linked, whether it's marriage or whatever, buying a place, or friends, or whoever, any group of people. If it's more than one person,
Right.
essentially, you need
One
to
person should
communicate.
get clear too.
Well,
I mean,
sure,
right?
absolutely, absolutely.
Exactly.
But
Oh
if you
my
got
God,
another
yes.
person
It's a
involved,
whole other, yeah.
yeah, you got to communicate, and you better be prepared for literally every single possibility.
And look, buying a home is risky by yourself. With other people, it gets more complex the more people that are there. So there's no way you can avoid every risk.
Right.
But the more that you prepare, the more explicit your communication is, the more proactive and involved it is, the more likely that when something does go pear-shaped, that it's like, okay, we have in place systems to discuss this and work all this out. So we're prepared. Just assume something will go wrong. You just don't know what,
Right.
just there are going to be complications. As long as you're like, okay, we meet, let's just say in the long term, every month and we discuss things. Maybe we do it on a Zoom, even if we're in the same house, because then we can record it and we can get a summary at the end. Right? So
Smart.
that's a nice little tool that AI has given us now, so that there isn't just one person taking notes. There is that you can go back and go to it. I would say, yeah, just the more people, the more complex, and there is no way to avoid every downside. What you do is you get yourself really healthy in communication and information. And so when things come along, you're ready for it.
And it's also great because if it turns out to be a group of people that you can't have really straightforward, honest communication with, and then you can go, okay, well, this isn't going to work, but now I have greater clarity on what I'm looking for, and I can see if I can find that in a different configuration.
Or we
Is there-
get two townhomes together, but I'm not responsible for the mortgage with you, or something like that.
Yep.
And actually, I'm sorry, Raquel, I actually never got back to you. You asked about like zoning and building on
Right.
property. I did want to say that in Seattle, well, actually Washington State, our zoning is I don't know, it's not exactly, it is becoming more dense, more building is being allowed in Seattle. And we are
Okay.
famously a single family household, very single family zone for many, many years, which is part of the reason
Right.
why it's so unaffordable here. That is getting significantly better.
Oh, good.
Which is also why this is such a timely thing to talk about, because then there are more possibilities to both not necessarily buy out and get a farm and have the tiny homes, but actually maybe have a single family home here and then build a dadu and still have those separate spaces.
Mhm.
And maybe
And-
split the lot, and maybe it can be different, or maybe they are condominiumized on the one same lot, but they
Right.
have two separate tax parcels.
Right. And for people who don't know what dado is, it's detached
sorry.
alternative
I
dwelling
shouldn't do that.
unit. No, that's
Sorry about
totally
that.
fine. That's totally fine. Huh?
Detached accessory dwelling unit. Yep.
Yes. So basically, like the idea of, hey, I have a home and a large backyard, but mom and dad are going to move in with us, but they're going to stay in the tiny house out back. Right. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, just that's one
I'll take
idea
that
of
tiny house.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Or
Exactly.
and I'm going to move in a tiny house, rent out the big one, have that paid for,
Yes.
and go
It's so
travel.
wonderful.
Exactly.
Yes, so wonderful.
And there are some more formal organizations now that are trying to find places. Let's say there are seniors who live in their larger houses. They don't really want to move, but they don't need so much space. So they are trying to work with those existing homeowners to say, well, what if we built a dadu, you moved into that, and then we took over or bought the larger home. So there are creative configurations around that with that are being made possible by the new zoning.
Oh, fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was there anything either of you wanted, or both of you wanted to tell our audience that we didn't give you a chance?
That comes to mind. Just a couple days ago, we did a presentation that was specific to a house. Instead of being general, we were in this kind of 6-bedroom, they're large, big kitchen house. And in preparation for it, one of the sort of numbers puzzles like I got to play with was, what would it look like for people to buy this together in different configurations? And then I backtracked to what would they have been able to purchase if they did not join forces?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
That's cool.
Which it's
Yeah.
just a backing into numbers in kind of a different
Mhm.
way. And I felt re-energized about this whole topic all over again.
Love
Because
it.
it was like, okay, well, you could buy a $600,000 house, or you could buy a $300,000 condo. In Seattle, neither of those get you in the
Much.
city
Yeah.
much, or in the city. And instead you join forces and you're in a $1.6 million beautiful Craftsman with a phenomenal kitchen and a glorious view. The numbers back the philosophy.
Yeah.
Love it.
And it was fun. It was is a fun numbers game.
Because we don't want to snow anyone about this. We don't want to
Yeah.
portray it as some panacea with no problems or anything. So it was great to have those numbers and to put specifically different types of people in different rooms, and it was really fun.
So
I
just
did
wanted
want to say we are giving a talk July 22nd and July 27th, in-person talks in Fremont. That's two things. And one thing I'm just tentatively exploring right now, I am wondering if perhaps or maybe even Ruby, I haven't talked to Ruby about this, by the way.
Throw it in there.
Because in a way, I want to say doing the transaction, finding the home isn't that complicated for me necessarily. But I'm wondering if I can offer a service where I start to help people having their conversations.
Yeah.
And to
Yes.
launch them, like almost be a facilitator, not tell them what to do, but so that I'm a neutral third party saying, okay, Alex, how much money do you have? Okay, Chris, how much money do you have? Okay, this is what you've told me. This is what you agree. So there's no one in the group who has that responsibility at first.
Yeah.
And then once they get the pattern, they can take it over.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of exploring maybe doing that. And okay, what do you have saved in this? What's your agreement for this? So I just ask them and they just have to answer it. I don't care what the answer is. They just have to say it out loud.
Yes.
Right.
And everyone hears it.
Yeah.
That's it. So I'm sort of playing with maybe doing something like that for my co-housing groups.
Well, and it helps people get from we're just having the conversation, that whole like cycle, just we're running around in circles and nobody's actually getting anywhere, right?
And just say, I get the big bedroom with the master bath.
Excellent.
That's the conversation, I
That's
think.
that's the
Exactly.
conversation.
That's all you
Yeah.
really need to know, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's all anybody needs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Well, this has been such a great conversation, and it's definitely given myself and Jennifer a lot to think about. But I think I think our listeners are going to be like, wow, there's a lot to consider here, and it gives us all, I think, a different way to think about how we're going to retire or how we're going to structure our living situations, whether it's in retirement or two divorced women who have kids and they're going to help each other with childcare. There's so many iterations where this idea can be another option.
Back to our roots.
There is a spot on our website. We do say, look, if you just need someone to help you get your thoughts together, like you can just book 20-30 minutes with me and Ruby, and you can just talk to us and we'll just ask you questions to get your thinking clear, because you might have not heard about a solution that works for you and your co-buyers, co-owners. But most likely because there's so many permutations.
Yeah.
So if it's like, hey, Amy, can you just kind of brainstorm with me about what might work for us? How should we be thinking about this? Same with Ruby. What should we get together? And it's not some big, you have to put an application and do this and that. It's just, can we chat for a little bit? And it's easy enough to schedule time with us.
Oh, that's so awesome. This is
Yeah.
really cool work you two are doing.
Thank you.
That's really cool.
This is very cool. Thank you so much to both of you for doing this.
It's resistance work. It's revolutionary. It changes the world. It's like it's big.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Y'all, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
mean, not just for doing the work that you do, because obviously that is so very cool, but for also then coming on and talking to us and our listeners about this, because there's no telling, what's getting stirred up for people from hearing this conversation. So
Yeah, thank
you
you
very, very much.
Our pleasure.
And it's important because we don't necessarily shout from the rooftops what our work is. Me and Ruby, we often just do the work, but we don't always say, hey, we're doing this. So it's very important that venues like you are bringing us on to talk, because sometimes we're so busy doing it that we forget to tell people.
So there you go. We get to be the ones
you.
to
Help
shine a
spread.
light on what y'all are doing and spread the news. And
Thank you.
yeah, so especially people in the Washington area, look up Amy and Ruby, and links will be in the show notes. And for people outside of the Washington area,
So
Have that
You can
conversation.
give us a
have the
call.
conversation.
and then connect you to people in other
We
states.
can-
Like, we're well
You can
connected.
call us and then we can say, what do you like? And then we'll say, let me get on the horn and find someone in the
Love
Bay
that.
Area who would suit you.
Love that.
cool.
So that is just as easy, because actually that's a good way to get a referral, as opposed to Jack down the street said he had a friend who said a guy in Oakland was okay.
Yeah.
As
Exactly.
opposed to, okay, what do you want? Okay, let me ask my other realtors who they really respect in that area. Let me talk to a couple and I'll see whether they're on the ball and would fit your personality.
I love this.
Yeah.
Empowering people, making connections. So good.
All the good stuff.
Love it. Thank you, ladies.
Thank
Oh,
you.
thank
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Do you want to recap?
I do. I am so
Jazz?
pumped up and jazzed
Yeah.
and fired up
Yeah.
after this conversation. I don't know if you've ever had this thought or this fear, but like every once in a while, I'm like, what happens if I just get sick and, or I don't know, have an aneurysm and die? Who's gonna come and look for me? Yes, yes, there are people in my life who love me, and eventually somebody would be like, nobody's heard from Raquel in a while. Somebody should go check on her, see if a cat has eaten her face, right? Like somebody should check, right? But but like realistically,
Well,
you
I
know,
hear what you're saying about that. My version of that is, oh, my kids are going to take care of me. Right?
Well,
And they're both equally
they're both equally possible and equally far-fetched.
no, they're both equally not proactive at all about our own futures.
That
and
is
our
very
own
true.
life. And
That is very true.
And what I really love about this whole idea is it's, again, polyamory totally leading the way.
Right.
I'm not polyamorous, but damn, I should be. Polyamorous people seem to know how to talk to each other about everything.
Well,
right?
we can definitely learn some things from that community for sure.
Right. It's like, why do people not talk?
Yeah.
Why don't
Girl.
we plan? Why don't we, like, do you know how much
So many reasons.
do you know how much planning I did before I got married about my retirement or having kids? Zero.
Yeah. Well, and you but
Zero.
but you're not alone.
And
But
that's what I'm saying.
this conversation can get us all thinking about, I can take control over what my future looks like.
Yes.
Or if you're thinking, oh my God, there's no way I can own a home. I'm gonna live in apartments and have to move every couple of years, blah blah. No. Yes, there's a lot of planning and thinking and all the things that have to go into it, but there are ways for people to experience home ownership. There are ways for people to experience community. There are ways for people to, to age in place and have a full life. There's just
Endless options.
There are endless options. Like we don't have to get stuck with the, 2 or 3 options that are fed to us in, media and movies and
Capitalism.
all of those.
Patriarchy.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
there's a reason why multi-generational tribal communities work.
Agreed. I do think it's revolutionary what they're doing. I do think it is a form of resistance. And I think it's quite potentially the type of work that is adding to our autonomy, well-being, communication, ability to advocate for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Just the list goes on and on. And the one thing that I will take away from this is, damn, if I still don't really need to work on all of my legal power of attorney, et cetera,
Oh,
et
girl.
cetera, et cetera. I
Oh, girl.
still need to do that stuff.
Girl,
And I
I
shouldn't
got
laugh.
so much to do.
And I shouldn't laugh because this is really, it's a serious thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's time to get to business.
I gotta get on it. And there's one friend of mine specifically who told me to get all this together years ago. And I
Of
know if
course.
she listens to this, she's gonna be like, Raquel, I
But
talked to
think
you
about
before.
it.
And I'm like, I know.
But think about it. Would you want to co-house with someone who didn't have all their stuff in line, all their paperwork?
Not at all. Not
Exactly.
at all. But this could be like, if you're having this conversation with friends, this could be the, you know, the kick in the pants that one person needs to be like, okay, I really want to live with my friends, or I want to live with, you know, whoever.
Yeah.
This is what I need to do to be able to do that.
And the other thing I want to take away from this is the reason we don't say how much we make publicly is because capitalism doesn't want us to. They
Right.
don't want us to say, I make such and such. This is how much I get paid. They don't want us to share that information because we're always guessing, especially as women. Am I making the right amount of what I'm supposed to be making? We don't really know. We can go online and research that, but it's not super clear.
Mm-hmm.
And if they keep money ambiguous,
Yeah.
then we have less power. If
Right.
we know this is how much I make, this is how much I can afford for a monthly payment, this is my credit score, this is how much I have in reserves, this is
Right.
how much I can put away in reserves. If we know all those things, then we're
Yeah.
better prepared to make good decisions about our future.
But I agree with everything you just said, but I will also say that there's another layer to that of, I don't know if this is the best word, but shame.
Yes, I
Shame
agree.
and comparison, because if you don't make as much as the other people that you want to co-house
House.
with, or, you know, or co-buy with, or whatever, if you don't make the same amount of money, or you do make good money, but you haven't saved anything, or you haven't saved as much,
Yeah.
or, you know,
But you could
like, there's
easily get into that same situation in a marriage, and we never, I shouldn't say we never,
exactly.
but very infrequently do spouses sit down and talk about that.
Absolutely. And what I like about what Amy and Ruby brought up is that there are ways to structure it. You can even do percentages, or, you know, whatever, but there are ways to have the conversations so that everyone feels safe and heard in the conversation. And as Ruby said, if those conversations don't go well, then okay, no harm, no foul. You then know that's just information that you have, that's not the group for me to live with.
Right. It's not going to work out. We're still friends, but we're not
Right.
going to live together.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that conversation is just as important as we've decided, now let's get all the ducks in a row. You need to know, first off, can I live with these people? This is revolutionary, and this could lead to society looking so much different and being so much more beneficial for people. I'm
Great
so
work,
excited.
Amy and Ruby.
Yeah, seriously, ladies.
Amy and Ruby kicking butt out there.
Right. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Such a great conversation. I'm really pumped up about this now.
Bye,
Thanks,
Raquel.
Jennifer. Bye. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend.
Or you could leave us a comment and a 5-star review, or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com.
Thanks, everybody.